Good evening, everyone. My name is Noah Barkin, and I have the privilege and the honor of calling myself the Vice President of the Whig-Cliosophic Society. On behalf of the American Whig-Cliosophic Society, NAACP Princeton, Vote 100, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. This forum has been over 6 months, not years, in the making, driven by a shared goal: to create space where students and community members can engage directly with the candidates seeking to represent New Jersey's 12th Congressional District. Tonight is more than a debate. It's a call to action. It's a chance to hear from candidates and to ask tough questions and to demand accountability. Civic engagement doesn't start or end on election day, but it does start with showing up, staying informed, and participating in moments like this. And importantly, all Princeton students who are American citizens here on campus can vote in this election. If you're eligible, you can always register or update your registration to Princeton, New Jersey, which you can seek some help with from our friends at Vote 100. The stakes in this election are high, and the outcomes will shape our community and eventually the future. Today, we are joined by 11 candidates in this race. We're joined by Squire Servance, Sujit Singh, Kyle Little, Sue Altman, Adam Hamawy, Shaniel Robinson, Adrian Mapp, Elijah Dixon, Matt Adams, and Sam Wang. Our debate today will be moderated by the president of the Whig-Cliosophic Society, Alejandro Ramos, as well as one of our head fellows of Vote 100, Ian Mann, and finally, one of the co-presidents of the NAACP Princeton, Stanley Stoutmeyer. Before we begin, I just have a short statement that I have to read based off of Princeton's policy. Before we begin today's program, it's important to underscore Princeton's free expression values. Members of the Princeton University community and visitors have broad freedom to express themselves in a manner consistent with university policy. At the same time, the university policies prohibit conduct that, among other things, disrupts university operation and activities. To be clear, any individuals who disrupt this event are in violation of university policy, subject to disciplinary action, and will be required to leave the premises. With that, we're going to get started. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement, and then we'll move on to a moderated Q&A, where each candidate will have 45 seconds to answer. If you have any questions for the candidate and you haven't already, you can scan the QR codes that are on either side of the room and submit questions. And at the end, we'll reserve 1 minute per candidate for a closing statement. Thank you very much for your time, and we're going to get started now.
We will begin from the right to the left. Our first question will then be from the left to the right, and we will alternate from then on. I will bang the gavel when your time is up. Please conclude speaking the moment your time is up. We will not give you the opportunity to finish your sentence. Please refer to our timekeeper here for when you have 15 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 seconds. Yes, to clarify, the opening statement is 1 minute, the closing statement is 45 seconds. We can begin from the right.
My name is Adam Hamawy. I'm a father, a doctor, a veteran. My parents immigrated to New Jersey when I was 7 months old in search of a better life. I joined the military to pay for college, and I served as a combat trauma surgeon in Iraq. I was a 9/11 first responder. Now I work in the district in emergency rooms, and I volunteer overseas in disaster zones and war zones around the world, most recently in Iraq. Now, in the emergency rooms, I see people every day struggling and being crushed by healthcare insurance industry. And I see people in the richest country in the world having to choose between paying their rent and paying their medical bills. At the same time, I see that we are spending our money overseas, and we're told that we don't have enough money for Medicare for all, but we have enough money for bombs, endless wars.
Thank you. Yes, also
Testing.
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 Yes, my name is Adrian Mapp. I'm the mayor of the city of Plainfield. I am an immigrant from Barbados. I grew up very poor. I also grew up with a severe stutter to the point where I was teased into silence and felt as if I didn't have a voice. But then there became a time when I got my voice. And I am running because of the many people in this district who feel as though they don't have a voice. And so I want to be your voice. And when I run with a slogan of your voice, our voice, it is not just a slogan, it is personal for me. And so I want to be able to go to Washington to make sure that we bring back resources to address the issue of housing in this state. I want to be able to bring resources to address the healthcare needs of the state. I want to go to Washington in order to reduce the costs of education, to reduce the burden of student loans that you're being faced with every day.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Elijah Dixon, and I'm a father, community organizer, and senior officer for one of the nation's largest community development and financial institutions, where I work across the state and disinvested in historically underinvested communities to reduce the gaps between income inequality. Currently, I'm actually working with one of the studios here at Princeton, Professor Carter's reclamation studio for humanistic design, where we are exploring low-status communities like mine in the city of Trenton and how systemic biases and structural inequities have created conditions for poverty, essentially. And so my platform here, outside of my unrelated engagement with the University of Princeton, is centered on economic opportunity and anti-imperialism. I see all of our systemic inequities today as a function of deeply rooted policies that are only serving to reinforce the conditions of poverty. And I'm going to stop before I'm cut off.
Hi everyone, my name is Jay Vangenker. I'm 28 years old. I'm a former Biden White House and Department of Energy official, and I'm running for Congress because I feel this immense sense of urgency in this moment. Right now we're governed by Republicans who profit when our neighbors are detained, when our health care is denied, when our utility bills are skyrocketing, and then we're told by Democrats to wait our turn, just be a little bit patient, that someone's been around a little bit longer, and then things will go back to normal. But you all know that our generation has never experienced normalcy in our politics. In the aftermath of 9/11, throughout all these forever wars, I was raised in a recession, I graduated in a pandemic, and now so many of us are struggling to live in the communities that we grew up in, all while we deal with the advent of AI and data privacy that make it harder than ever to find a job. So I'm running because it's time for a new generation in our politics. We can't keep electing the same status quo over and over again and expecting things to change. It's time for some new energy in our politics.
Hi everybody, my name is Kyle Little, and I am the first candidate to enter this race, and also the hardest working. We established that just this past Saturday. And I am a small business owner. I own 2 fitness studios. One is in Edison, New Jersey. The other one is in Metuchen, New Jersey. One is in the best downtown in the country, if you didn't know, because Metuchen was rated the best downtown in the country. And one is in the biggest city in Middlesex County, which is Edison, New Jersey. I'm also an adjunct college professor. I teach at King University. So quality education is very important to me. And representing college students is very important to me. I want to fight for student loan debt. I want to fight for affordable housing. I want to fight for a $25,000 first-time home buyers grant. I want to fight for women's reproductive rights. I want to fight for all of the things progressive because I am a true progressive. And what's the key word in progressive? Progress. That's why I'm running, because I want to push this district and this country better in the right direction. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Adams. I am New Jersey 12. I grew up in this district. I've worked in Union, Somerset, and Middlesex counties, and my wife works at the Institute for Advanced Study, and my son goes to TCNJ. I'm a former councilman in Middlesex Borough. I know this district, and I would be qualified, and I thought so when I started to run several months ago. But then Donald Trump and this administration decided to go to war with Iran, and they decided to bomb boats in Venezuela. And then I thought, well, I have 30 years of military service. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. I'm a judge advocate general. I know where we are and where we could be going when we block the Strait of Hormuz. We could be looking at war with China. You need to think about this decision tonight. Who is the best qualified to deal with the terrible, awful situation that Donald Trump has put this country in? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sam Wang, and I'm an educator and a scientist. And the thing about scientists is that we use data and facts to solve problems and build things. Here in my research here at Princeton University, I'm a professor of neuroscience. My students and postdocs and I have worked on understanding how autism develops in the brain, and we've developed technology to help with early diagnosis. Other students and I, not the same students, have worked on gerrymandering, and we have worked together to fight gerrymandering across the country and find ways to make elections fairer and more equitable for all Americans. The reason I'm running is that these things that I've worked on in neuroscience, in early diagnosis, and in autism, and in elections, the work is not enough. The events of the last year and a half have made me realize that we all have to do a little bit more. We all have to do whatever we can. And my part of this is to run for office, and I'm hoping that everyone in this room will work together to turn back the damage and build a better tomorrow.
Good evening. My name is Shaniel Robinson. I am an Air Force veteran, a mother, a grandmother. I have been a Somerset County Commissioner for 3 terms, voted and appointed by my peers 6 times to be the director. I am the first African American to serve in that capacity. I am not new to a fight. I upheld the Constitution and defended the Constitution when I took an oath of office to serve in the United States Air Force, and I did the same when I became an elected official. I am an elected official with solutions-based, results-driven, and my results are a pathway to quality education, quality in healthcare, quality in infrastructure, environmental justice, social justice, public safety, and I am your candidate for District 12, one of the most diverse districts in the state of New Jersey, and I lead those efforts in making sure that I have good policy and governance for all people at all times. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Squire Servance. One of the questions that I think many people are facing, especially many students, are what is the future that looks like we're about to step into? Is it going to look like uncertainty, or is it going to look like opportunity? You know, this is that stuff that keeps me up at night. I have 2 young daughters, and I'm not just keep staying up at night just worrying about what's happening today, but I'm worrying about what's it look like for their future and for your future. Is there going to be an environment that's safe? Is going to be a democracy, institutions that are protected? What does that look like for us? I've been working in complex institutions all my life and building businesses. I am in science, in law, and one of the things that we've been doing, particularly since we launched this campaign, is being grounded in what we're doing and knocking doors, over 10,000 doors in the district at this point. I think it's time for a new generation of leadership. I think it's time for fresh, new perspectives and approach. And my name is Squire Servance, and I would like to be your candidate.
My name is Sue Altman, and I always get a little PTSD when I come to Princeton because I played women's basketball at Columbia University, and Princeton's team was very good and always beat us in Jadwin Gym. But it is wonderful to be here. I have been somebody who has stood up against powerful people my entire career. When I was a teacher, I stood against Chris Christie, who threw a wireless microphone at me because I was questioning his choices to privatize education in Camden. When I was a state director of New Jersey Working Families, powerful Democratic Party bosses had me hauled out of a hearing because I dared to question their corporate tax incentive scheme. And most recently, Elon Musk spent $1 million against me to keep me out of Congress. When I get there, I will fight so hard to fight for our rights as individuals, as voters, and to make this economy work for everyone, because right now it's not fair.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Princeton. I'm from West Windsor. My name is Sujit Singh, and I ran for West Windsor competitive mayoral race and closed the gap from 70-30 to 50-50 almost against quarter-century Republican. My campaign is following a simple idea. Your voice, your ideas, your concerns should shape Washington policies, not some corporate lobbyist. And this is one time, I would say, once in a generation opportunity to elect a new leader, to make our district an innovation model district, to create jobs for everyone. I went to door and I saw every third, fourth house, I see young kids having tough time getting jobs. I will work with industries and universities to make our district a model district and bring federal fundings for all of us. Thank you.
We will begin with our first question from left to right. It will be 45 seconds. Our timekeeper will raise a sign at 15 seconds.
Thank you so much, Ian. The first question is, with all the candidates in this race, what is one concrete policy that you will introduce or that clearly distinguishes you from all the other candidates present here today?
Absolutely. So we all see ourselves from last few years, the affordability is the big issue. The one elephant in the room is the housing cost. I will put forward practical solution to reduce housing cost, lower utility expenses, and expand affordable, efficient public transportation. So we need the smart federal policies to bring tens of $billions here, create more jobs, bring our district a model innovation district across the United States of America, and create jobs, support small businesses, and bring affordability to working families. Thank you.
Oh, that's an easy one. Medicare for all. The thing that most frustrates me is we are strangling American innovation because our young people have to get corporate jobs so they can have health insurance. We are strangling our ability to have artistic people, musicians, because they have to go into jobs that will give them health insurance. And when I was Senator Andy Kim's state director, I had so many conversations with constituents who are struggling to pay bills because someone in their family got cancer or got sick. And so medical bills are something that get in the way of every single American, and I want to get rid of that. We are the most richest country in the world, and we should not have a situation where people are going into debt because they can't pay medical bills.
So I think a lot of us are going to say, well, believe in Medicare for all and things like that. So I'll take a different approach. I think one of the things we need to do is be aggressive in our oversight. It seems like the Trump administration, the only thing they understand really is litigation and oversight and bringing in hearings and bringing in subpoenas. That's where I would spend my time, and I think we need to aggressively hold people accountable, everyone that has catered to him over the last 2 years, and bring them to the forefront and make sure that everybody gets held to account, that our voice will be heard going forward. And I think that is our approach, because I think that's one of the strengths that Congress has and we should leverage to the maximum extent.
Having a lived experience being an elected official, these are complex issues and conflicting priorities. They're all interdependent, and I would address, and I can't pick just one, it's affordability. The ability to afford to live in the state. We have teachers, nurses, and the like who aren't able to afford a home. You have healthcare costs that are rising, that there are no caps, and they're increasing constantly by double digits. We are one illness away from losing it all. So I would set policy that would address affordability issues, whether it's student debt, whether it's immigration, whether it's infrastructure, environmental justice, public justice, healthcare, and that's my time.
A lot of good policy ideas come back to a core idea and contain a lot of the good ideas that you're going to hear about. And that core idea is restoring Congress as the Article I power that oversees the other branches of the government. A lot of the difficulties that we're seeing, a lot of the attacks on our system, all stem from a runaway executive or a runaway judiciary. That's the core thing I'm going to work on. In my remaining time, and I have remaining time, in my remaining time, I want to talk a little bit about AI. My own research uses AI for early diagnostics of autism, and AI can have great power, but can also take away jobs and change our lives for the worse. And so I'm going to work on AI policy to protect privacy and make sure that we use AI to serve us and not the other way around.
So in my spare time when I'm not in the Army Reserves, I am a general counsel, senior counsel at a defense contractor in technology. And I have seen every single day the importance of what AI can do. And here in the United States, the administration is literally doing nothing to stop what could be the end of humanity, say for example. Skynet is not out of the question. We need human intervention in all of AI. And what can AI do in terms of discrimination? It's unbelievable. You remember redlining? Just AI can be used to disguise redlining against minorities more so than you can believe. And we need to regulate AI.
All right, so we're all Democrats, and most of us are going to have pretty similar policies. But one policy that separates me is my Trenton revitalization policy, because I want to revitalize Trenton. It's our state capital, and none of us are proud of our state capital. So well, all right, but anyway, whenever I go to Trenton, I see like a lot of there's a lot of work to be done. Okay, we have to get those homeless people off the streets. We have to invest in Black and Hispanic-owned businesses. We have to build hospitals and build better healthcare systems there. We have to invest in education systems there. So if that's one policy that separates me from the rest, it's definitely that one. And also, I vow that when elected to Congress, I'm going to donate $500 of my own money to a New Jersey charity.
So when I was at the U.S. Department of Energy, we got Joe Manchin, a coal executive, to sign on to the largest climate investment in U.S. history. And when Trump came into office in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, he tore that money apart and sent it to ICE, so that every time you see a child being kidnapped on our streets, that is being paid for by our utility bills. So the first bill I would introduce in Congress would be to abolish ICE and send that money right back to the clean energy investments we need to create jobs, lower our energy bills, and fight climate change. We can do all three priorities at once, and it means that we need to spend our money here on our communities and not kidnapping our children.
If I was afforded the privilege of serving you all as the representative for our district, I would serve as the organizer-in-chief. During my day job, I have the opportunity to interface regularly with many different federal agencies, from the Department of Treasury, Department of Education, whatever's left with it, Department of Community Development, and we cannot legislate our way out of these structural inequities. There is bipartisan support for agencies like ICE. There is bipartisan capture of their interests through the deeply entrenched capital systems, corporations who are donating and infusing dark money into our politics. And so we can talk about Medicare for all. These things are not going to happen without having an organizer on the ground serving to represent our collective interests. Thank you.
We all know that education is the great equalizer. It is the vehicle that has transported me from a place of poverty to this very stage. And so the very first piece of legislation that I would introduce would be legislation to eliminate the endowment tax. The endowment tax is a tax on working families, on the poor. Endowments were intended for research. Endowments were intended to provide relief to poor families. And as a result of our tax code, it does not allow for that. It's a tax on working families, and I would eliminate the endowment tax.
So I support Medicare for all. I want to abolish ICE, so I don't think that really separates us from our policies. But we all want to unrig the economy, and how we would do it, I would start taxing the billionaires. That would solve many of the problems that we're talking about. It would be able to fund housing that's more affordable. We'd be able to fund Medicare for all. And we'd be able to restore the middle class that's falling apart and disappearing in front of our eyes.
Thank you all. We will begin with our second question from the right to the left. If elected, what specific steps would you take to reform our democratic process in order to increase civic participation and voter turnout?
We can't address voter turnout right now unless we address what's happening with the Republicans who are trying to suppress that. So we need to do everything we can to fight and make sure that the SAVE Act doesn't pass. So how I would make elections more accessible to everyone, make Election Day a federal holiday so people don't have to take work off to be able to get there. Let's pass the John Lewis the Voter Act so that people could vote without restrictions, and let us also make voter registration just like automatic for people who turn 18 years old.
Well, I too would be a fierce advocate against the SAFE Act because it is a poll tax. And we fought many decades ago to eliminate the poll tax. And it suppresses, this SAFE Act will suppress the vote, and we should not be supporting any legislation that would result in lower voter turnout. And we have to make sure that we reform the system so that voting can be on weekends, so that working people will be able to vote without having to be concerned about whether or not they will be late for work or whether or not they will not be able to vote, period. And so we must reform the system, Sunday voting.
Given that we are in the midst of one of the most right-wing conservative governments within the history of our nation, and I do not anticipate that to change until, at best, 2028, when we could perhaps overcome any type of presidential veto. My solution would not be rooted in policy, but rather in just bringing information to the people, going on like mobile organizing tours, presenting forums, community information sessions so we can meet people where they're at and leverage our various community-based organizations and from the local, state, regional agencies and entities who do have sensible policies and sensible workers there to bring the information directly to the voters. I'm going to end there. Thank you.
So I think one way to increase voter participation in this country is to make it easier for everyday people to participate in elected politics and for everyday people to run for office. And the best way we can do that is by getting big money out of politics. So I think everyone here would support getting rid of super PACs, getting rid of dark money, lowering the contribution limits to make sure that millionaires and billionaires can't buy our elections. But we should also explore programs like democracy vouchers, where every American citizen is mailed a check that's funded by taxes on the billionaires, where they can decide where their small dollar investments go, because that's the better way to fund campaigns, through public financing. This way, not only the privileged and the wealthy and the well-connected, people blessed by machines, people who have millions of dollars, are the only ones running for office. This is how we can get everyone involved in the electoral process.
So, of course, I agree with everybody with, making sure that the SAVE Act doesn't pass and making sure that we get the John Lewis Voter Rights Act passed. But I think one way to increase voter turnout is to talk to people and actually educate people. What are the policies that you actually want to see out of your federal government and your state government? Who are the candidates that align with you? When I'm talking to college students, I'm talking to my students all the time, and I'm like, what do you expect out of me if I were to be an elected official? If I'm talking to seniors, I'll talk to my grandparents and other seniors that I train on a regular basis. And I'm saying, what are some policies that you would expect as a senior living in this society? So just talking to people and letting people feel their trust in you, that's what will get people to turn out and vote for you as a candidate.
The John Lewis Voting Rights Act needs to be passed. The concept of pre-clearance, where states can't pass legislation affecting voting rights without federal approval, is very important. Election Day needs to be a federal holiday. We also need to look internally. We can't just point to all the states are doing all the gerrymandering without looking at ourselves. Has anyone looked at NJ12 lately? Why is it like that? I wonder. Right? We kind of got to think about why that is and what we've done and what we can do to correct it, because are we giving everyone one vote? That's the question we need to look internally at also. Thank you.
Making democracy work better for everyone is a major goal of my life, and it's why I'm running for office. We have a short-term challenge and we have a long-term challenge. The short-term challenge comes from all of us in this room turning out to protect the vote this November. That especially means places where it can be attacked, in close districts such as the 7th District north of us and Pennsylvania 1, 7, and 8. I encourage you to all go out and protect elections there. After stopping the damage, there is a large set of programs that we can undertake to fix the problem. As one example, if Congress passes independent citizen commissions as part of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, we can stop gerrymandering nationwide. And it's an example of how to use science to help save our democracy.
Just 3 weeks ago in New Jersey Assembly, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. Now, we are all talking about the SAVE Act not passing. That is true. However, to increase participation, we must be with the people, and everyone must have a voice and a seat at the table. Students, young people, you are the backbone of our future. We need you at the table. You are not to be a spectator. We have to embrace all who have a voice and a stake in building back America better. Now, what does that mean? That means that you have to stay engaged, and those of us who are a little bit more older and seasoned, welcome you into the fold.
As this, I'm sorry, Squire.
So look, voting rights is foundational to our democracy. And at a time when the current administration is trying to silence votes, I think we need to be empowering people and amplifying voices. That's where we should be. So I agree with a lot of others on the stage. We need to make sure the SAVE Act does not pass. I think we need to have same-day voter registration. I think we also, to the extent we can, ensure that people automatically get registered. I think outside of some of those policy things, I think we need to continue the dialogue in our communities, let people understand why their vote matters, and continue the dialogue with our community, ensure that every vote counts.
The fight for democracy and the fight for our economy are two sides of the same coin. In part, we have trouble turning out young people, for instance, and I don't blame young people for this, because the Democratic Party, because politicians have not delivered for people for decades. When I was the state director of Working Families, we worked on same-day voter registration. We worked as the lead litigant to get rid of the county line. And I found out then that if you don't make power accessible to people, if you don't deliver for people, they will think the system doesn't work and they will opt out of it. So for both the economy, for our capitalism to work properly, and for our democracy to work properly, we as Democrats have to deliver for people.
I will tackle in 4 ways. Number one, make sure that it's automatic registration for voters, right? Number two, we want to make sure we protect voting rights, not to let any hurdle put in the way. Number three, we want to make sure that hidden money doesn't flow into politics in elections like this, because we are representative. We are representative of each of you. It should be your voice, not from hidden money coming in our electoral process. Number four, based on my knocking on the door for several thousand homes so far, community doesn't even know there is some of the community members, there's an election, there's a primary election. Oh yeah, we'll vote in November. We need community education. That's what I want to work for. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your responses. Over the past couple years, there have been significant criticisms of federal action and rhetoric that many viewed as targeting pro-Palestinian protesters, particularly on college campuses. At the same time, other voices have also raised concerns about the safety of students from discrimination, especially Jewish students. Looking ahead, how would you approach federal involvement on college disputes over Israel and Palestine? We'll start from the left and go to the right.
Protecting our democracy starts right with the new generation, right from college. The freedom of speech is the key for everyone. It's our national value. That's where we start, freedom of speech. We should not suppress, we should not put political ideal into the colleges and hijack them by threatening the way we have seen in the past, right? So this is really against our democracy, and I'm going to fight for that. We must get together, especially in a Congress, in protecting the students' protest, peaceful protest. That is really important. That is a fabric of our democracy, and that's how we can protect, to make sure that there's a freedom of speech, and we should, yeah, thank you so much.
So I have led a lot of protests in my day, and I am a firm and fervent believer in freedom of speech, and the ability to protest and the ability to make sure through creative means that your perspective is heard. And I think that's really, really important, as is academic freedom. I don't want the federal government or anyone else litigating what we can and can't teach. And at the same time, it's absolutely crucial that every single student, regardless of religion or ethnic background, feels safe even when there are protests. And I believe in the college administration's ability to balance both of those things: protest, academic freedom, and student safety.
Plain and simple.
I keep getting, I'm like chopped liver tonight. Man, listen, these staggered seats are messing me up.
We're gonna move on over.
Well, look, I serve on the board at Rutgers University. So this is an area that is very sensitive to me. This is an area that we've dealt with issues at Rutgers about. I think first, if you can't have freedom of speech at the university where individuals can go and share their ideas and learn and have those difficult conversations, I don't know where else you can have it. This is where you need to have it. We need to stop coming into our universities and trying to impart politics on what professors are doing, what the students are doing. I think protests are part of that. That's part of free speech. And it's difficult conversations to have with people, and those are challenging dynamics. But I think if we can continue to keep politics out of it, it'll make our university stronger.
Plain and simple. Freedom of speech and protecting the students should be protected and not punitive. Policies that protect freedom of speech, especially on college campuses, should not be tied to funding. That is not the America that we know. That is not the America that we need to have. This is what we call the part of the American dream, part of being an American. Having freedom of speech, freedom to your religion, freedom to practice, and freedom, we can agree to disagree. But bottom line is, your freedom of speech on universities and on college campuses should be protected and not punitive.
Our freedoms are under attack. Our freedom to speak freely is under attack. One of the few places where we can converse with each other in person and not across the internet through Twitter or Facebook or Blue Sky or what have you is on college campuses. Freedom of speech must be protected here in any way possible. At the same time, we also have to protect freedoms. And one of the freedoms is to be able to live in safety and not be in danger from our neighbors. Today, the Trump administration is talking about changing the rules of college accreditation to make it harder to speak freely. We have to get into Congress, pass laws that prevent these, and also organizations have to file lawsuits to block these attacks on our freedoms.
So 30 years in the Army, in the Army Reserve, the National Guard. As a member of the American Legion, I have, on many occasions, sworn my oath to the Constitution such that I'm ready to die for it. I'm ready to give my life for the First Amendment. I believe so strongly in the First Amendment. I also believe that we have to have safety for all the students. And I believe that college administrations are in the best position to determine how best to protect both the students, the protesters, as well as those who are bystanders. So I don't think the federal government should be involved. I think the college administration should be doing their best to balance the equation. Thank you.
Well, this question is pretty personal because as an adjunct college professor, I teach on a college campus, and I know that all of our students deserve the right to free speech. And I also, you know, as a black openly gay man, I have experienced bigotry all across the board. So I stand against bigotry hands down. So anybody who is, you know, committing anti-Semitic attacks or Islam or, you know, is engaging in Islamophobia, those people should be charged as hate crimes, and they should be, you know, charged to the fullest extent of the law. I want to make sure that our students are protected and they have the right to say how they feel. And again, I just will be a major advocate for these students. Thank you.
So this is an issue where a lot of powerful people have constantly disappointed us. You hear a lot of big talk about how we need to empower the new generation, and then when the new generation steps up against these injustices, we see silence or even worse, attacks. We saw this in the attacks from Republicans and Democrats on the encampments here in Princeton and all around the country that peacefully protested to stand up for Palestine. We also saw a lot of folks that pretended to stand up against anti-Semitism while all they did was subpoena long lists of Jewish faculty or unleash hate rallies like Unite the Right over in Charlottesville back in 2017. So what we need to do is block the president's power from using the IRS to abuse college administration officials or students by threatening our funding. If we start there, we can lower the temperature and actually get to real peaceful conversations on campuses rather than threatening funding.
As an African-American male, I deeply empathize with many of the protected classes that have been at risk, and not just at risk, under attack over the last couple of years especially, but for generations here, especially our Jewish and Muslim brothers and sisters here on campus. I stood in solidarity with the encampments, also joined regular mutual aid groups bringing food and refreshments, for others who are putting their educational prospects on the line. We are living in very dangerous times here where the executive branch and even the legislative branch are weaponizing and engaging in what's called lawfare and utilizing structural policies to disenfranchise folks of their voice and their vote. It needs to stop. Thank you.
So the many gains that we take for granted today had their origins in protests. The Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act. These are things that we enjoy today and we take for granted, but they had their genesis in protests. And protests have long been, on college campuses, have long been recognized as a First Amendment right. And so we need to condemn the executive branch, and we need to ask the executive branch to remove itself from college campuses, because the effect that it is having a deleterious effect on free speech. And it has no place on college campuses, and we should continue to encourage protest, not deny protest.
We have to do everything we can to protect academic freedom, the ability to protest, and the First Amendment. It is fundamental to our democracy. And we have to differentiate safety and protection from physical harm, from safety and protection from ideas. Because if we don't have these conversations on the campus, then it is one step further to authoritarianism. So we have to protect the right to speak up, and we have to have a safe space for people to have these conversations. And it can't be tied to federal funding.
Thank you. What will be your strategy if the Democrats remain in the minority following these elections? And in any case, how will you legislate change in the context of a White House that is hostile to your positions? We'll start moving from the right to the left.
I hope the Democrats are not in the minority. We expect it to be, we expect to take the House. But whatever position you are, it is essential that whoever goes to Congress speaks from moral authority, speaks loudly and clearly on what is right and wrong. What is lacking today from all of our lawmakers is listening to the people and the constituents and having the backbone to stand up and say what's right. We have to talk to each other and we have to make deals, but these deals shouldn't be at the expense at fundamental rights, and we shouldn't be listening to corporate interests and to billionaires. We should be listening to the people in the room like you.
Well, I too hope that the Democrats are in the majority as a result of the midterm elections. But what we have to do is hold the executive branch accountable. And we have to learn to work across the aisle, regardless of whether it's Democrats or Republicans in charge. And so one of the things that I would make sure I do is work across the aisle. I'll work with the problem solvers, and together we will be able to come to a consensus in terms of what needs to be done in order to hold the executive branch accountable and to protect our democracy. So it's important that we work with other lawmakers in Congress, and together we get it done.
As someone who considers themselves to be a socialist, I'm less concerned about the left and the right, the Democrats and Republicans, because I feel as though the enemy is among us. It is not just a political party type of issue. It is a structural issue and the entrenchment of deep corporate money within our politics. We had a supermajority back when Obama was president, and he tried to get a public option incorporated into Obamacare back in 2008. It was 2 Democratic senators who would effectively kill the inclusion of the public option before it even hit the floor. And so we have to look and understand that it's not a left or a right thing. We are united by our common interests and our social fabric here as Americans and as citizens. And the enemy, if I were to objectify it, is corporate interests, and we need to disable Citizens United.
So the mission here is, how do we get progressive legislation passed in a bipartisan way? Morley, how do we actually get Republicans to feel compelled to vote for progressive priorities even when we aren't in the majority? And I've done this before. At the US Department of Energy, I was in rural Ohio the week that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance spread the nasty hoax that they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. And we met directly with Haitian workers in electric vehicle factories. And we met directly with folks who had voted Republicans all their lives because they realized that pollution affects everyone, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. I've met with coal miners in West Virginia who pushed Joe Manchin and other Republicans in West Virginia to say, we finally have to get signed on to climate policies. We've seen the success in getting at least some, and we'll get the rest of the Epstein files released. We can do it all.
Well, let's just say that the Democrats are in the minority. One thing I'm very good at is calling these people out, okay? Because if ICE is deporting your family members, who's in control right now? The Republicans, right? If Trump's big beautiful bill is affecting everybody, who's in control right now? The Republicans currently have control of the House, the Senate, and they have the conservative Supreme Court, and Donald Trump is the president of the United States right now. So everything that is really going on right now, you cannot blame the Democratic Party for. You have to call these people out and tell people to vote what's in their best interest. Honestly, if we're really keeping it real, nobody should be voting Republican unless you are a straight, white, rich man. Because other than that, they're not doing anything that benefits anybody else.
Okay,
switch to the other side.
So all of my life, I have been a negotiator. I mean, literally, that's been my job title. As a lawyer working for technology companies, I've been negotiating. And sometimes it's negotiating over price, but a lot of times it's over things like indemnification, limitation, liability. Either way, you have to know your opponent, right? And in this case, I feel that whether we're in the majority or the minority, either way, I believe we're going to be able to negotiate with those Republicans who have sold their soul, who have ran for Congress and then decided that they don't want to actually do anything. Well, they're going to be willing to negotiate. Guess who else may be willing to negotiate? The lunatic in charge may be willing to negotiate. Just a thought. Thank you.
Let me address the spirit of your question. The last 30 years have seen close presidential elections, and the House and the Senate change hands multiple times. The last time this happened was in the first Gilded Age, after the Civil War. The reason that we have this question is that small change in voting leads to enormous changes in policy and the kinds of things that we're seeing over the last couple of years. The long-term solution is to build a more resilient system. That involves local governance, involves federalism, where we have control at the federal, state, and local levels, involves Supreme Court reform, where the Supreme Court perhaps is enlarged in size or has finite terms, such as 18 years. If we can build a more resilient system that represents all of us, then we can have something that is no longer so sensitive to important questions like yours.
Plain and simple. Put people over politics. No matter who is in control, the work is still the work. I have led a bipartisan organization for the state of New Jersey for the past year as New Jersey Association of Counties president. I have been a leader for Somerset County in the state of New Jersey and representative throughout the United States for National Association of Counties, which represents over 3,000 counties in the US. And it's a bipartisan organization where we, like I did in the military, focus on the mission and the goal. Nobody asked when we were in the foxhole in the trenches whether you're black, white, Republican, Democrat, male, or female. It was about bringing our brothers and sisters home and making sure the mission was complete.
If we're in the minority, the goal is progress over perfection. We need to find commonalities with the other side. You see the administration pass baby bonds, and now they call it Trump bonds. You see him pass criminal justice reform, last one, which was a Cory Booker idea. There are opportunities to get things through that progressives like us care about, that we can get things through in a bipartisan fashion. And as an attorney, I've spent my career negotiating deals, making sure that not just both parties get the benefit of the deal, but that the people underlying that contract gets the benefit. And that's what I would do as a congressman.
If we don't win the House back and we don't win the Senate, I'm actually deeply concerned about a peaceful transfer of power. And if that were to happen, I would double down with the governor and the delegation here in New Jersey to build capacity and infrastructure to protect our most vulnerable community members here at home. Doesn't mean I don't care about the long-term structural democracy work. It's what most of my career has been about. But I would fight with the Attorney General, work with the Attorney General to fight the federal overreach. I would work with the governor to make sure we were safe and secure. And I would organize the rest of the delegation to join me in those efforts.
I'm talking to each of you on the door-to-door, and my policy is what I will bring it to not polarize more our Congress. I will work together. If we don't win, we still have chance to work together on some of the things which we align together. We don't want to put a fuel to the fire. That's what I'm hearing when I talk to a lot of intellectuals and a lot of residents, that we are done with this pendulum swinging left, swinging right. So I'll work hard. I have done that for 30 years, implementing large-scale technology transformation programs, including public sector and federal policy implementations. And I work across the aisle for my life, and I'll do that in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question from left to right. How can you ensure that federal protections regarding undocumented students in K-12 schools apply equally to public and private school students?
Our country's backbone is the talents, the young generation. We want to make sure we protect our students. Doesn't matter what immigrant status they are in, and especially the programs that the TPS we talk about. We must work together in a Congress for an immigration reform, which ensure that we have the humane law enforcement, and we must have a dignity in terms of keeping family together. That is our national value. So I will work hard and ensure that we protect the immigrations, especially temporary status, across the board. This is not the way to just cut off and just let loose, and that's against our national values. Thank you.
So one of the shortcomings of a lot of legislation right now is that it focuses on public spaces as being safe from ICE agents. And that's a good thing. We want to start there. But it has to extend to places like places of worship. And it would absolutely have to extend to all places where education is taking place, including private schools. When I was in Andy Kim's state office and the state director, we dealt with thousands of cases around immigration. We dealt with many, many detention cases. And it became obvious and apparent that our country has to rebuild, not just abolish ICE, we have to rebuild our immigration system from scratch. It has been a political football that both teams have played with for my entire life.
We are a nation of laws. We're a nation of immigrants. Those aren't mutually exclusive. We're a nation of values. I think at the core of what we're doing and what we're thinking about in this country, to answer your question, we need to ensure that whatever we do, it has to be grounded in humanity, grounded in protecting our citizenry, protecting those that are coming in to this country that are making our country stronger. I think absolutely the protection needs to cover both private, public schools. Kids are kids. They should not be used as pawns by this administration, and that's how we should be thinking about it. And I think that's the through line for me as a congressman that I would be leading in those efforts.
Again, it's about the people. Humanity, compassionate and dignified care, and the policies in which we invoke. It's about the people business, not politics. And we've gotten so far from what it means to have a life with liberty, have a life with freedoms, have a life of happiness. So protecting those rights for our students in private and public schools. Policy that protects the rights, civil liberties, that protects the rights and making sure that they have a pathway to citizenship. That's who we are as Americans. And I believe that all Americans of goodwill would support policy as such, and we can do it together, not just me as a congressional person.
A few months ago, here in the town of Princeton, a dad was walking his 9-year-old to school. I think it was Community Park. And that's one of the elementary schools in town. And he dropped his daughter off and he left, and he got picked up by ICE. And this created shockwaves among people in our community who don't feel that they're targeted by ICE. Everyone is a target. Here in the United States, for most of our history, about 1 in 8 people have not been citizens. The Constitution applies to all people in the country, citizens or not. And so what we need is to end ICE, which is an agency that was started in 2003, and replace it with civilian enforcement and immigration laws, and to keep them out of schools, houses of worship, and other places where people gather.
So this is a balancing act. However, just because a school is private or public doesn't mean that it's not subject to the jurisdiction of the government. We as Congress can pass laws that protect, specifically protect, those immigrants who are here in the country and who want to be citizens or don't. It's just a simple matter of passing legislation and making fairness the rule.
Well, I agree. We definitely have to pass legislation to make sure that these schools, whether public or private, that all of these schools are protected, because it is completely unacceptable for ICE agents to be anywhere near a school and brutalize the kids. I also want to make sure that everybody knows we are in a country that is built by immigrants. So when people are coming to this country to get a better life, we have to make sure that there's an easier pathway to citizenship. More programs to make sure, because when we get these people into our country, they actually help our economy. They actually do the jobs that people don't want to do. I remember I was at my grandma's house this past summer, mid-July, 95 degrees out there. There were a bunch of Latinos building her fence. Okay, so we need to make sure that these jobs are still done, and we need to get these people here who are trying to build a better life. Thank you.
I'm sure many of you heard the story just a few weeks ago where an ICE agent went to Columbia University pretending to respond to a 911 phone call to get into a dorm and ultimately arrest an undocumented student. And I think that, a lot of us agree that we have to abolish ICE. I think we actually need to go further and prosecute these ICE agents that impersonate local law enforcement officials. And I think if and when we take back the House, we need to hold oversight hearings that put these ICE agents on notice that if you continue to break the law, you will not just lose your job, your agency won't just be abolished, that you will be prosecuted and put in jail. I grew up in a sanctuary town in Hightstown, New Jersey, about 15 minutes from here. I grew up with DACA kids. I grew up seeing this in my entire life. I am the youngest person on this stage, and even I am older than ICE. It is time to abolish this organization and prosecute its agents.
I do not anticipate that we're going to be in a position to have sensible federal legislation passed that's going to protect our immigrant brothers and sisters. And so what I would do, if afforded the privilege of serving as your representative, I would work with the state legislature to be able to pass laws that would protect our immigrant brothers and sisters. Here, unfortunately, Phil Murphy he was faced on his last days out in office with the task of passing 3 comprehensive bills that would have protected our immigrant communities, and he only signed one of the 3. It's disheartening, but it's also motivation to keep on pressing on, and we need to organize and work with organizations like the Loud Deaf, and others to.
I don't think it matters whether it's a private or public institution. Our immigration laws must protect all students, all immigrants, and I am an immigrant. And so the notion that you would have laws or you would have an immigration system that targets undocumented individuals or that targets the immigrant community, period, is not a policy that the administrative branch of government should be carrying out. And one of the things that I would do is work towards comprehensive immigration reform so that dreamers and immigrants that have temporary protective status are protected. That's what I would work towards.
I agree. We need to pass federal legislation to protect all students, all institutions of learning, whether they're public and private. We need to protect houses of worship. We need to protect hospitals and medical facilities. ICE agents shouldn't be walking into emergency rooms and taking people out of there. And we need to abolish ICE. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's not making our communities safer. They're terrorizing our communities. They're grabbing people off the streets, and they're killing people in broad daylight. So it is irredeemable, and it must be eliminated.
What role, if any, should the federal government play in the construction of new units of affordable housing? From right to left.
So the federal government should work to increase the supply of housing that's more affordable. It could start by repealing the Faircloth Amendment, which in the 1990s restricted federal funding for housing. That alone would start increasing the supply. And then we need to also look at rebuilding the infrastructure so that we could, hold the capacity for the increased population and people could thrive.
The federal government has a significant role to play in solving the affordable housing crisis that exists across the nation. In New Jersey, we are 220,000 units short. And what we must do is bring more low-income housing tax credits to the state so that developers can build more affordable housing. We also must have a credit from the federal government that is provided to those who want to own a home for the very first time, but who are not able to afford that first-time home. And so there are things that the federal government can do. We can definitely build more housing, provide the incentives to the state to build those housing units that are needed.
All across the world, there are systems called social housing, where in places like Europe, Asia, Africa, you have federal governments that are not only subsidizing, but they are directly building housing units, and it's at a much more affordable rate because they're cutting out the profit incentive that many of the developers and corporate landlords and others within the industry have essentially entrenched within the process. So that's number one. But then two, I would utilize what's called the earmark process. That is the Congressionally Directed Spending Initiative, which is part of the budgeting process where federal representatives can essentially earmark money within the federal budget to communities, and I would help to subsidize community land trusts and other sorts of cooperative housing models. Thank you.
So there are a lot of things the federal government can do to increase the supply of housing. I'll start with 3 ideas. One is we need to repeal the Trump tariffs that have made it difficult to build in this country, on steel, on lumber. If we can decrease the price of those inputs, we can increase the supply of housing. We also need to fix our immigration system because so many folks who have been building the homes across this country have been deported. They've had their refugee status terminated. So if we can increase the labor supply, we can have apprenticeship programs, embrace our union labor, we can make sure there's more people who are equipped to build housing. The third of many things we can do is also prevent Wall Street speculation of real estate properties. You see a lot of apartments get built and then BlackRock comes in, takes that supply right off the market. If we can prevent Wall Street firms from doing that, we can increase the supply of housing as well.
So one policy that I have is a $25,000 grant for first-time home buyers because housing is completely unaffordable at this point. And especially here in the state of New Jersey, I mean, a one-bedroom apartment, you can't get less than $2,000 now. So we have to definitely put more money into building more housing units and just make housing more affordable for, again, first-time homeowners, and then also make sure that seasoned homeowners get a good federal tax cut. Thank you.
So a public-private partnership is the best way to go. As legislators, we would have the power of the purse, which means that we can offer tax credits and we can offer tax incentives. We'd also need to pass legislation that makes sure that this was given out equitably, because Congress has a tendency to favor some of the more red states in situations like this, so we'd have to do it just very equitably. It's the power of the purse that as legislators we control and can work on this problem.
Dealing with homeownership is important to address at both a federal, state, and local level. As an example, in the Senate, there's currently legislation bottled up that would facilitate the construction of new housing and prevent developers from taking over the show and making unaffordable units. Here in New Jersey, actually, as part of this process of running for office, I've learned about state and local initiatives. For instance, most of us were at a forum at the Baptist Church north of here just a few days ago. And I learned from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice that there are faith-based initiatives to help people afford and move into unoccupied units. More broadly, we need to find ways to help everyone build wealth, whether it be through payments for first-time homeowners. There are ways to do that through tax credits and allowances.
At the federal level, there is a funded program called Homes for All Act, $800 billion over 10 years. We need to get those monies into the hands of the people that need it the most. 10 years is too long. If it's funded, let's roll it out. Secondly, the program that Sam was talking about is houses of worship, CDCs and EDCs, and other nonprofit organizations going after grant dollars from the federal and the state level to actually build housing in their neighborhoods. Houses of worship, one I've worked with under my consulting company to get them $1.5 million for their CDC to be able to provide housing in their own community. Houses of worship have been the staple of the community, especially the Black community, for years.
I think there's a lot that the federal government can do. I think we can increase federal incentives to increase housing. That's one of the rare bipartisan bills that came out of Senate, was a bill that said we need to increase the housing supply. Now, that includes affordable housing. I think for us, the issue is New Jersey. We actually have pretty strong affordable housing laws. We just don't follow them. I think one non-legislative thing that you could do is, hey, if the federal government is giving infrastructure grant dollars to the state, to specific municipalities, tie those dollars to that particular municipality implementing and following the laws in New Jersey to build the appropriate number of affordable houses in their municipality. That's two things that I think the federal government can do for us.
So fun fact about New Jersey is we are actually the top state for young people living at home with their parents, which to me underscores exactly what you all, whether you're a parent or a young person, you know this viscerally. It's too damn expensive for a young person to live in New Jersey. Their housing prices are way out of reach for what people at a starting salary can afford. So 3 ideas. One is we have to focus on infill housing building. So in New Jersey, we have a lot of areas that had shopping centers. We need to incentivize housing there. 2, we need to build infrastructure and transportation so that we can build transit-oriented communities. And 3, we have to ban corporations from owning houses. They're not companies that can,
What we see is the Home for All bill, $800 billion. If we put it, we're going to go back to square one in 10 years or later. Also, the way we build houses is unsustainable. It's very expensive, getting expensive for our young families, low-income families. We need factory model modular housing, federal policies which reduce housing development cost, work with federal programs, incentivize, we provide incentive to our municipalities who will follow. the zoning, fast zoning and fast permit process, and that's the only way to go, to bring technology for us, to work for us, to bring the affordability right here for young families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes all of the questions from our student organizations. We now have some questions that have been submitted from the audience. The first question, going from left to right. This is a very competitive election with many people running. It was hard to fit you all on the stage today. If not yourself, is there another candidate on this stage that you would vote for and why?
I love that question.
It's really good question though. What I would say right now is that I'm a people person. My campaign is grass-rooted with the people only. And I strongly believe I will make it. I have shown in my mayoral election last year, we knocked 8,000 doors in less than 3 months. And we are knocking on 20,000 doors this time, making 50,000 calls. It's a grassroots. We are going to make it. I'm going to make it. But when it comes down to who I will support, it's too early. I'm learning, and I'm friend of almost every one of them. It's a good team. Thank you.
So this one's easy for me. It's Shaniel. The commissioner I'm a Somerset County resident, and I am a big fan of her work. I really respect her military service. I'd love to have a woman in the seat, and she's just an incredible person with an amazing story, and I respect her tremendously.
So I think we have a lot of great candidates up here on the stage. A lot of people that have done amazing work and have some really great experiences that cut across the board. I am grounded in policy and in specific issues, and so unfortunately, I can't name a specific person, but the issues that I care about and sensitive the most with respect to affordability, with respect to increasing the access to healthcare, whoever I feel is aligned the most with my positions, that's who I would say.
My choice is a personal choice, so I won't announce it publicly. But what I will say is that I am a team player. And I've been talking to some of the other candidates. This is more than just this race. And we have to come together and work beyond the race, beyond this moment. So whoever wins come June 2nd, there is still work to do. And we all have to have made friendships and connections along this journey. Some people I may not have otherwise met. So what I would say is that we continue to fight, we continue to work, and we cannot take our ball and go home if we are not the selected candidate.
This is an unfair question, although I will say that we who are here on stage together have actually spent a fair amount of time. It's kind of like going to swim meets or to like chess tournaments. We show up at these things and we actually hear from each other a lot. I'm going to start with the idea of values. I think it's really important to have people who really are grounded in the values of the Constitution, people who really understand that there needs to be disruptive change. I also think it needs to be somebody, because of representing a specific district, someone who's lived in the district. I've lived in the district for 26 years, and so I've put down roots here. And even I am still learning about the corners of the district. I'm going to say there are a few people who come to mind as being really wonderful. And this doesn't mean the rest of you are not wonderful, but Adam Hamawy, I think, appreciates the need for disruptive change, as does Jay Vangankar, and Matt Adams and I have had good conversations about the Constitution, and Squire Servance, who's a good neighbor in Pennington. And I know you're trying to get him to gavel me out. I'm sorry, but I said the fourth one, and you totally missed the cue.
Easily the toughest question we've had, at least I've had, because I've had the opportunity to speak with everybody, and I can tell you, I like everybody. And maybe that's part of who I am. I like to get to know people and talk to them, and it's been, win, lose, or draw, this has been a great opportunity. I believe that the #1 issue facing our country is the executive branch's trespass onto legislative authority. And everyone, I think, feels that same way. I feel that Sam is in the best position to fight my fight if it's not me. He's an expert on the Constitution, and he aligns perfectly. And I love everybody, but aligning with my own priorities, that would be my choice.
There's a lot of great candidates up here. And so actually, give everybody a round of applause for that, because there's a, but I will say I am still keeping my eyes open. I want to see who shows up. I mean, it's very prevalent right now who shows up to a lot of these forums, actually talks to the voters. So the people who are currently not here, I will not be supporting. So they will not be on my list. I will tell you that right now. But there's a lot of great candidates up here, and I will give you, I guess, an answer in due time.
I think this race has shown that for once now, finally, that the county line is gone, that everyone has the right to run for office. Everyone has the right to represent this community. We're done with the era of being told you don't have enough money, you're not the chosen one, you don't look like the district. This is finally an opportunity where everyone has a chance, no matter what kind of qualifications you want to come up with. It's the people who show up on this stage who actually matter. So I'm excited. We're at a rate of almost 2 candidate forums a week now. We've really started to kind of trauma bond all of us. Some of you have handed me a pen when my pen goes dry at some of these debates, and we've all really just had each other's backs, because come November, we're all in this together. We're going to make sure a Democrat keeps this seat. So I'm excited to have some more candidate forums, and we'll all make our decision on June 2nd.
I, like many other candidates here, have come to favor and befriend, our peers throughout this process. I would just say that as someone who is focused heavily on structural reforms and structural reformation, one of the other candidates who I've heard not just called for the abolishment, or is it abolition? Perhaps, thank you, for the abolition of ICE, but actually called to dismantle DHS, has been Dr. Hamawy here to my left, and so he's definitely got my support there. And then also he was also a volunteer doctor over in Gaza, which, there's no one else probably in this row who's done that. So he's got my support from that regard. Thank you.
I have lived in this district for over 40 years. My kids were born here. And I believe that we've all filed our petitions probably a couple of weeks ago. And so we are still very early in the process. And I believe to name a candidate would be a vote against yourself. And so I intend to be in this race, all the way to June 2nd. And I will articulate my policies to the people of the 12th Congressional District, and I intend to emerge victorious. But I have been living here for over 40 years. I intend to serve this district in Congress.
I think there's many good people on this stage, but this race isn't about an individual. This race is really about values and principles and what this country stands for. And so when I look at someone, that's how I'm going to evaluate someone, is what are their stances now? Are they consistent in what they're saying? And some of them are. And so the other thing is that I want a progressive candidate that's going to stand and be consistent and say what happened in Gaza was a genocide. Are they saying it now, or they were saying it before, or is this just because that's the way the winds are blowing? I'm going to want someone who's saying abolish ICE now, not just because what's happening today, but what happened 5 years ago. ICE has been around for 20 years. So this is about principles.
Thank you. And for our final question, another question from the audience. Final question, another question from the audience about AI regulation. What specific federal AI regulations would you implement if you were elected to this seat? Again, we'll go from right to left.
Don't get a break, you start right away. So we need to slow down. AI wasn't around 5 years ago, and it's exploded on the scene. There's a lot of benefits that could come from it. It could help in medicine, development of drugs, efficiency, but it's affecting our children, it's affecting education, it's affecting job, it's affecting the climate. So what we need to do is stop, slow down, make sure we understand all the effects, positive and negative, and that's why I support Bernie Sanders' moratorium, so that we could really move forward and make sure that we're really helping people and not just a profit incentive for the corporations that set them up.
AI is here to stay. I believe that we must put guardrails around the data centers that power AI. And I believe that given the amount of energy that is consumed, we need to make sure that there are benefits, community benefits coming from the companies, from these data warehouses, so that the energy cost to normal residents, which increased by anywhere from 20 to 39%. So we need to provide utility credits. We need to provide guaranteed jobs to the people in the community where the data centers are built, and we need to make sure that there is a community tax incentive for those municipalities.
I do support a moratorium on all new data centers being constructed. There's a very acute danger that that these data centers are having, not just environmentally, but also the deleterious effects on our youth and their cognitive development by the over-reliance on AI, and especially on formative minds, and whatever is that the frontal lobe that's developing. I mean, please, I'm not a doctor, but I would just say that there are. Thank you so much, Dr. Wang. So there are dangers right now, and and actually, in fact, Elon Musk has a data center through Grok or X, or one of those AI companies, XAI, in Memphis, and look up the environmental degradation that's taken place so far. It's terrible.
I support creating an AI user's Bill of Rights, because every day in our utility bills and in our mental health, we are subsidizing the lives of billionaires who have implanted these data centers into our community. They take up all our water, they take up all our electricity, they take up all of our data. And they're using this information not just to make money, but to damage our mental health, poison our minds through these algorithms. And so what we need is a ban on non-consensual sexual imagery that we've seen that's been taking advantage of a lot of young people. We need restrictions on data centers that say any tech company that wants to build in our area, you've got to build clean energy generation. You have to have sustainable water systems. We, as everyday folks here in Central Jersey, can't be subsidizing the lives of these tech billionaires. AI innovation should benefit communities like ours.
So we must crack down on these data centers because right now they are harming our communities. They're increasing utility bills. They are just causing problems with the climate. So we have to crack down on those data centers. That's first and foremost. Second of all, we need to have regulations on what exactly AI could do, because at this point it's pretty scary that people can impersonate you. They can take your voice. AI is really starting to get people in some serious trouble. So we really have to put federal regulations on it, state regulations on it, even if it's down to like the county level. I don't care, but we need to have these regulations in place for AI for sure.
So right down the road, we have one of the foremost experts on AI, Alondra Nelson at the Institute for Advanced Study, and she worked with the Biden administration to draft an AI Bill of Rights. And among those critical components are an anti-discrimination provision. As I said earlier, we cannot allow redlining and discrimination to take place, and we need to have laws that stop that from happening. We also have to ensure privacy. We have to ensure that AI is not reaching in and using algorithms to manipulate us. We also, as I said earlier, need human intervention at all spaces, because the end of humanity is a possibility. Thank you.
As Matt Adams has said, Alondra Nelson over at the Institute is an expert from the Biden administration who's proposed limitations on AI. Two major innovators, John Hopfield and Jeffrey Hinton, have said in their public addresses, including their Nobel address that they got for founding AI, that AI is a serious problem that affects all of us. Food is regulated by the federal government, drugs are regulated by the federal government, flights, roads, all these are regulated by the federal government. We need someone who understands these things. John Hopfield, my mentor, is someone who I've spoken with him about that. We need legislation. We need a department of the federal government that will look ahead and find ways to regulate AI in a responsible manner to make it serve us.
My career as an IT executive manager, and then me being in government as an elected official, and prior to me being an elected official, I have the expertise, knowledge, and the intersection of both worlds. And I've sat in rooms where decisions are made on what AI is doing, what AI can do, and the development of all these different warehouses. We must champion and advocate policies that protect our communities. What does that mean? One, these incentives, the community or the corporations should be given back to the communities in which they are placed. Two, the regulations and policies must be done with one where we have all stakeholders, and very good, third, very good oversight.
I think there needs to be AI regulation, but I also think we need to ensure that we are harnessing the power of AI for the next generation and innovation for industry in this country. I think from an AI, from a regulatory standpoint, we need to have some regulation and guardrails around bias, transparency, and where and how AI is used. We need to have regulation with respect to accountability and make sure you're not using it in a nefarious way. These are the things that we need to do from an AI perspective to ensure that we are harnessing the power and creating guardrails for regulation, but also creating jobs for America.
So I agree with the climate concerns, the environmental land use concerns, the data privacy concerns, turning your kid's brain into mush concerns. All of those are top of mind. I will add to that pricing surveillance. I don't want to give the seller all the power in a transaction. That's absolutely not sustainable or good for our economy. But I want to think a little bigger. I want to think about how AI is actually the sum total of all of human knowledge. And so we should treat the dividends and the hopeful prosperity and the profits that it generates as something that is collectively owned by all of us. So I would like to think about how we can equitably distribute the money and the profits that are generated, because I don't trust these tech CEOs and I don't want to replicate the mistakes of the past.
Well, AI-shaped economy is going to continue to grow, take away more portion in the GDP, and then the way we calculate GDP will also going to be redefined. So what I support is that regulation around the AI in all areas. Not only that, but also in education, in schools, in college, where we want to make sure that our kids get productive, not get handicapped by basic skills which this generation have learned, and they use AI. So there may be some guidelines we have to put together. Lastly, I would say we must use the emerging technologies, like IBM has built the largest battery and geothermal plants. The big company must bring their own energy source for their data centers. Thank you.
Thank you. You will now each have 45 seconds for your closing statements, starting from left to right.
I'm a community advocate, and I have worked in communities for my life, to solve real problem with the people. I worked in a West Windsor nonprofit, improved the quality of life for 600 residents, adults with disability and their families. I have seen firsthand how federal policies are disconnected with everyday life. And that's why I decided to run. And now if you see, New Jersey deserves the leadership who knows what our each everyday family going through. And I will work hard to bring smart federal policies to bring affordability for everyone through reducing housing costs, lowering energy, healthcare. So let's build a stronger and fair New Jersey to all. Thank you.
We are walking into one of those most vulnerable moments in American history. Somehow, the Democratic Party has lost the coalition that we had from FDR that carried us through Obama, and it shrunk and it dissipated in the face of Trump, not once, but twice. We are facing essentially a second Reconstruction period, where we will have the opportunity to do something different. And the most important thing, and political science research shows this, that when a pro-democracy party gets into power, it has to deliver for people. I have never taken a dime of corporate PAC money. I have stood up to powerful people my entire career, and I have a big an organizer who can build coalitions. I will fight, and I will build, and I will deliver for this district.
See, I'm not a career politician. I'm a trained biomedical engineer, neuroscientist. I'm an attorney. I'm a job creator, creating jobs in biotech that are creating, benefiting resources right here in Princeton. I am been called numerous times to Congress to advise on legislation and brief staffers. I'm part of the sandwich generation where I live with my 2 young daughters and take care of my in-laws. I will bring these lived experiences to how I will operate at Congress. I'm here to fight for healthier, more affordable communities, and with your support, I would love to do that.
I'm a political leader, not a politician. And the difference is that I come to this work with the experience of being a mother, a grandmother, someone who has served this country proudly. I don't let the ills of my life impact how I show up for others. As a disabled veteran, I'm sitting here, my hip and my knee is killing me, but I show up with a smile on my face because there is work to do. I am here to fight for those in District 12 and beyond. I am a leader with experience, solution-based, and results-driven. I am a leader to be able to fight for all people at all times. And it is time that we send someone to Washington, such as I have been trained under Body Watson Coleman to do just that.
My parents left China, fleeing communism in 1949. They came to the United States from Taiwan. We built a life. They raised me and 2 siblings, one on the autism spectrum. They were librarians. They were also Republicans. They believed in an America that was a small government, that believed in liberty, personal opportunity, and they built a life for themselves. We have lost our way. And the way to get out of that is to turn back and turn away from Project 2025, restore the Constitution, and put Congress back on top so it can restrain the excesses of the executive branch and create a better judiciary. I'd like to be your servant and your representative to rebuild government and to stop the damage of the last 2 years.
So I share so many of the progressive ideals that have been voiced here tonight, even though some people think I should be voting Republican. But the reality is, I've talked about the end of humanity twice tonight. And I've also talked about war with China. And if you don't agree we're in an existential crisis, and maybe I'm not your candidate. But if you know that we're in an existential crisis, and you know that my background is best suited to handle this existential crisis with war, with rules of engagement, the law of war, then I am your candidate. And I hope you consider that. I really do, when you're in the voting booth. Thank you. Matt Adams.
First of all, let me say I like Matt Adams. But no, I am the first candidate to enter this race, and I do not take that lightly because I have been grinding way before anybody else entered this race. I challenged the status quo. I challenged our honorable Bonnie Watson Coleman. But I hosted a small business tour, traveling and visiting small business owners like myself all across this district, talking to them about what they want and need out of the federal government. When SNAP benefits were cut, I hosted a food drive at my location, delivered food in Princeton, Plainsboro, Plainfield, New Brunswick, South Brunswick, everywhere across this district, okay? So I've been here, I've been grinding, and I entered this race to fight for marginalized communities. I entered this race to fight for you, and I did not take the opportunity of an open seat.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Once again, my name is Jay Vangenker. I'm 28 years old. I'm a former Biden White House and energy official. And for too long, the past several years, every day is some new news notification, some new horrifying headline, constantly meant to keep us in a state of distraction and anxiety because there are too many special interests that want us to lose hope. And we here at NJ12, we have an opportunity to send someone to Congress that isn't beholden to any special interest, that isn't blessed by a political machine, isn't backed by millions of dollars in dark money, isn't the chosen one. We have an opportunity to elect someone who has actually had the everyday experiences of this district. And so on June 2nd, I hope that you vote for someone not because they've waited their turn or been around, but because communities like ours can't wait any longer.
So thank you all for for affording me the opportunity to be able to come here and make my case for my candidacy. I've talked about my professional experiences, perhaps some of my lived experiences, my engagement with Princeton, but at the core, I'm just a father, a concerned father. I have a 4-year-old, and some of the things that have been going on in our country over the last couple of years are just unconscionable, especially the war in Gaza and the ongoing genocide, which has really provoked me and gotten me just engaged to just get back organizing, not just politically, but civically, socially. And I do yearn and wish for the day when I'm able just to go back to the garden and daydream along the Delaware and Raritan Canal about our future and her future, but we cannot do that with the current inequity, so I'm active. Thank you.
I am running for this district because of my executive experience, because of the fact that I have built over 6,000 units of housing in the city of Plainfield. I am running for this district because I want to address the issue of health care. I also want to address the issue of education and the costs that our young people are having to bear. I am running for this district to address the immigration challenges that we're all facing. And I am running for this district to address the tax issues that we're facing, to make billionaires pay more and to have working people hold or keep more money in their pockets.
I grew up working class in this district. I went to school, public schools here. I'm raising my family here. I work here, and I see patients every day, and I know the struggles that they're going through because it's happening every single day. I'm running to fund healthcare, not bombs, to abolish ICE and to unrig the economy. 2 years ago, when my medical team was trapped in Gaza, only the American citizens were allowed to leave after negotiation and pressure. I refused to leave anyone behind. I stayed back until the rest of the team and all of us could leave safely. Too many Americans are being left behind today. I will not leave anyone behind because that's not who I am. That's not what this country stands for. And when I go to Congress, I will not leave anyone behind.
Thank you very much to all of the candidates for their time and for their thoughtful responses this evening. We really appreciate you making it out here. This concludes our event for tonight. We kindly ask that all audience members stay within the building as we lead our candidates down and out to their cars, so that they're not getting totally mobbed. And then as a reminder, it's a... Okay. Well, it's a beautiful night, so if everybody has any questions left over for the candidates and want to ask them outside, please feel free to do so. And thank you once again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Good job, timekeeper. You were good. Timekeeper.